Welcome to Trekommendations, the Star Trek podcast that helps you navigate your way into finding some of the best Trek-related content. To do this, I always bring on a wonderful guest, and today we have a man that just loves to rant at a screen. He is a senior writer for Screen Rant, beaming in all the way from Manila, Magandangabi, John Orquiola.
Hi,
Welcome, John.
Jason. Thank you so much for having me here.
Well, thank you for coming. I'm glad we were able to work out, time differences. Time differences, an issue that we tend to have a lot just on Earth, and
Mhm.
yet, apparently, in the future, once we're exploring different planets, it's never an issue. it's
I think they
it's
solved it
fine.
because it's subspace, right? Wasn't subspace the solution to that? Just in terms of
Oh, is
somehow
it?
managing communications and being able to broach millions of miles of distance, and having instant conversations regardless of where you are in the universe.
Yeah, I just love the idea that they rock up to a planet. They're like, hail them immediately, and they're like, everyone's asleep. it's it's nighttime where they are. Oh, sorry. Yeah, because surely if they were just on the other side of the planet, that would change.
Right.
It's not like the whole planet's going to have one time zone, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
if only. Ours doesn't. At least I don't think it does. Oh, okay. And on that note, John, it's lovely to have you on. Obviously, anybody that even just looks at your Instagram bio knows you're a big Trek head. You're deep in the Star Trek world, and yet I need to calibrate you. We just need to kind of find out where you sit in that Star Trek fandom. Your
Okay.
likes and I was gonna say likes and dislikes. No, your likes and likes. That's
Sure.
it. We're positive here. I'm gonna start you off very easy, very easy.
All right. All right.
I think it's very easy. Simple. First question is favorite captain.
Favorite captain is Benjamin Sisko.
Excellent. Should I ask follow-ups?
Sure, sure, absolutely.
I, I don't need a whole dissertation, but yeah, just like a cliff note, something that makes him, gives him the edge over anybody else.
Well, I mean, it's the combination of everything he brings as a captain. First of all, his commanding nature, his authority, but also his humanity. He was the first Star Trek captain to be a parent and to raising a young son and doing a fantastic job as a single parent of raising that son. But also, he was a religious leader and he had to balance that fact of his life. And discovering as Deep Space Nine continued, he was a demigod. So there are all these different aspects to him, but honestly, I just Cisco checks off every box to me of a captain who I would admire and I would follow, and I just think is the top of the line. And if I can add just a second, like right below him is Kirk, because I just love Kirk,
Right.
especially Admiral Kirk. As I get older, I find I relate to Admiral Kirk more and more, and it's a little distressing in a way.
Yeah. You're like, I still want a little bit of adventure.
Yeah.
I can't, you know. Yeah. Excellent. I love that. I'm very happy for the little honorable mention as well. Well done. I like that. Um, here's a question with a bit more nuance then for you. Although after this first answer, I think I might know the answer, but let's see. Somebody approaches you because they know you're a big Star Trek fan. You don't know them that well.
Mhm.
You've got one opportunity to introduce them to Star Trek. What show or specific episode would you recommend that they watch to try and get them into Star Trek?
That is a great question. Now we're talking specifically TV shows, right? Um,
Yes.
I mean, I'd also have to calibrate them in terms of like how nerdy are they. If they lean towards the nerdy, I would say Next Generation season two, A Measure of a Man, which I think isn't just
That's a
incredible television, regardless of how nerdy you are. But if you are fascinated by things like you know the rights of sentient beings, that I mean, and plus it's one of the best courtroom episodes ever done for Star Trek. I think that's a big winner. If they are not nerdy, but I would probably pick an episode of Strange New Worlds, and I think I would choose the crossover, even if they don't fully get the ramifications of the two shows meeting. I think there's so much there that they would understand the love and fandom of Star Trek through the characters representing their own love and fandom. Archer being such a fan, Pike being such a fan of Archer, Borman being such a fan of Spock, Mariner being such a fan of
Yeah.
Uhura. So I think that would communicate the kind of love that we as Star Trek fans have for Star Trek, and I think and it's just a great episode.
Yeah, I mean that's such an interesting. Well, I love both. I mean, they're two great. That's two great episodes. Let's just quickly start with Measure of a Man. Another like element of that just makes it, it just gives it that little edge is the fact that Riker has to be the
Yes.
prosecution. Like he has to be on the other side, and it sort of shows how important duty is for them and how they do. They are in this organization and they're bound by certain rules. In fact, he's having to follow
Mhm.
these rules now, and he does like a great job. He
Mhm. Yeah,
really
he did his
tries.
best. Yeah, he really tried to win.
He's not phoning it in. But ultimately, yeah, fantastic episode, really, really good. But I love also this idea of, okay, there's the episode of Star Trek itself, but this episode is expressing love and appreciation for the fan, for someone who is a fan of this.
Mhm.
Imagine that you've got so many fans that we now have an episode where in the episode they're fanboying over Spock or something. Yeah, that's very cool. These are good answers. This is why. This is a senior writer. This is how you get the job.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
Speaking of,
I guess so. Yes.
well, this rolls nicely into my final calibration question for you. I imagine in your work, you come across a number of rumors of potential leaks
Mhm.
that quite often turn out not to be true. So I would like to know, is there a rumor or leak that you heard going around that turned out not to be true, but you really, really wish had been true?
Oh, that I really wish had been true. Um, that is a good question. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, there was a. I have the opposite an answer of the opposite question, which is, I was told a couple of years ago that Strange New Worlds was over after season 3. That was like a rumor that went around,
Right.
and obviously they came back for 4, and then they got 5. But that's an interesting question. A rumor that I heard that turned out to be true. Um, I Paul Giamatti getting hired in Star Trek, I'd heard about earlier than it actually happened, and that was an amazing thing that that turned out to be true because,
Yeah.
along with Holly Hunter,
Yeah.
what a coup, what a casting coup.
Hmm. Are you? I mean, yeah, this will be out. This will be out very soon after recording it, so we're still just before Academy's coming out.
Mhm.
But again, I know that you've had the chance to speak to members of the cast. You've kind of had this opportunity to dive in a little bit deeper, maybe than someone like myself. Where are you in your kind of expectation levels going into
Well,
Academy?
well, it's a little. My expectations have. Well, how do I answer this? I've seen some of it,
Dip-
so
Diplomatically is,
yeah,
is how you answer this.
so in terms of my expectations, without spoiling anything or giving any inkling, my expectations were fairly high, and I'm happy with I'm happy. So I'm happy.
You're
Let's
happy.
just put it that way.
Okay. 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 Well, that's fine. If you're happy, I'm happy. We're all happy.
I
That's
hope
what
you're
matters.
happy. I hope you'll be happy. I hope everybody who watches it is going to be happy.
Yeah. Well, I hope so too. Let's be positive. It's hard, isn't it? Because as stuff comes out, like it works both ways, right? When things start coming out, we get like previews of things. There's times where we see like a trailer or we see stills or something,
Mhm,
and we
mhm.
get really excited about something coming out. And we think, oh, this is going to be amazing, and it lets us down. And it happens the other way, right? Where you see stills, trailers, things like that, and you think, I don't know about this,
Yep,
and then you
yep.
see it, and you're like, oh, actually,
We just experienced
and
that.
occasionally, yeah, occasionally things actually marry up, and we get excited about something, and then for me, I can't remember. There were two things that came out. Was it Strange New Worlds? Maybe I think might have been season 1 of Strange New Worlds. Came out. Did that come out the same year as the Batman? The um,
Yes, season one, yeah, 2022, yes. So that was same year.
yeah, yeah. And I just remember like thinking, oh, there's going to be this new Star Trek show, and I really liked Pike in Discovery season 2, and I was like, oh, this is the show I kind of really wanted. When I was watching Discovery 2 season 2, and it was cutting back and forth between the two ships, and I was just like, I kind of want to be on the other ship. I think I'd rather be following what they're doing. This is the show I really want. And then I'm a big Batman fan, and this Batman movie was coming out, and it's like, oh, and he's actually a detective, and it's actually going to be a bit more kind of comic booky. And I remember just thinking, they can't both be good. It can't all be good. You know, this never happens. We were always disappointed with these franchises. And then they were both really good.
Hmm.
And I was happy. And I was like, oh, sometimes, just sometimes it works out that way.
My
So
approach honestly
let's
is that
see.
I expect it to be good. I'm more surprised when it
Yeah,
sucks. But that's just kind of my
right.
approach to things. So
You're,
yeah,
you're a
but I agree
positive
with you.
guy.
I agree with you. Both things were great. I actually,
Yeah.
I'll tell you this: I saw the Batman 6 months before it came out. I was invited to a secret screening at Warner Brothers, and we didn't know what it was going to be. I brought my friend, and he and I were thinking, it was like November of 2021, and we were like, "What Warner Brothers movies are coming out that that this could possibly be?" And we were like, the only thing that really stood out was the Batman, because the Flash was like pretty much coming out much sooner.
Yeah.
Why would they preview it like why would they preview it at this point? And so we were just sitting there thinking, it has to be the Batman. It has to be the Batman. Then the guy comes up on the stage and he's like, you were the first audience ever to see the Batman. And we were like, what? And it wasn't complete. The CGI wasn't done. There was a lot of previs. Like especially the action
Yeah.
finale in the arena. A lot of that was unfinished, but the movie was tremendous. And what an amazing
Yeah.
thing to be able to see it like 6 months before it came out.
Yeah. And I'm sure even that version still better than the Flash. So well done.
Oh my god!
That was okay. And that's enough Batman chat. Let's go back to Star Trek.
Yes.
I'm going to add something to the screen, my little clock, because it is that time to hear your recommendation,
Sure.
John. So, in less than 60 seconds, what is your recommendation and why have you brought it to the show?
Sure. My recommendation is the suite of podcasts by Virtual TrekCon, starting with the Seventh Rule, which is hosted by Barack Lofton and Ryan T. Husk, and then the supplemental podcasts, which are from Virtual TrekCon, which is The Main Viewer on Tuesdays and Star Trek and Chill on Fridays. All of which are, to me, essential podcasts to watch if you're a Star Trek fan.
Okay. I said 60 seconds or less. You've gone to the less option, so I appreciate that.
Okay.
I've got questions.
Sure.
Let's follow up. Oh, hold on. I've got to stop this here. Otherwise, it's going to start. An alarm's going to go off on my screen and everything will blow up. No. This is good. I know former guest of the show, shares Little Voyager Comics. At the end, when I asked, is there a recommendation you would like? Something about hers was podcasts. She was, this is one of the few Star Trek podcasts I listen to. I'd like to know more, hear more Star Trek podcasts. So she will be happy that we're finally getting some podcasts recommended on the show. You said, I think, that they are essential viewing
Yes.
if you're a Star Trek fan. Please elaborate on why you feel they are essential.
Sure. Okay. Well, let's start with the main one, the Seventh Rule, which began, I think, in 2019. Originally, it was Sirach Lofton hosting with Aaron Eisenberg, who passed away later in 2019, and they were reviewing every episode of Deep Space Nine, and then they completed that. And then they moved on to every episode of The Next Generation, which I think they're in season 6 now. And they started off with Denise Crosby in season 1 when they were doing those episodes. And they also got Walter Koenig to review his episodes of the original series. So they're now somewhere towards the tail end of season 2 reviewing. First of all, it's fabulous to have someone like Sirach, who was part of Deep Space Nine, to review his show. And he was kind of like one of the pioneers, along with like the Delta Flyer podcast, of like
Mhm.
Star Trek actors looking back at their own show and watching every episode and like relating what it was like at the time, and telling behind the scenes stories. And through Sirach, many people from Star Trek have been able to come on the podcasts as well, like other actors, other directors, writers. So you get a really fantastic insider look for many of the episodes that come out. And Seventh Rule also reviews every new episode of every new Star Trek that comes out. So they will do Star Trek. They did all of Discovery, they did all of Strange New Worlds, Lower Decks, Prodigy. Not every Prodigy, but like most of it. And when Starfleet Academy comes out, they will review that as well. So it's great to be able to have an insider perspective, but also a fan perspective. And then the other thing that the Seventh Rule and the
Yeah.
virtual TrekCon suite of podcasts does is they build a really fantastic community of Star Trek fans. So their live chat is always active for every podcast. And then when they review Star Trek episodes, the second half of the review is a group of fans who are like associate producers who contributed to the Patreon of the show, and you get to hear each fan's perspective on the episode they just reviewed. And everybody's different. Everybody likes different things. Everybody, not everybody agrees on how great the episode was. Some of the insights are really fascinating. Some of the opinions sometimes when you think an episode is really great and you love it, and you've loved it maybe since the 90s when you saw it or whenever, and then like somebody comes on and is like, I hated this episode. It's just fascinating. It's just fascinating to get these perspectives. So I just think that as if you're somebody who wants to connect to a larger fandom, that's actually a very welcoming fandom. It's a very there's no gatekeeping in this fandom. There's no like even though people disagree and have different opinions and stuff, it's always respectful. It's always and if you go to, like, let's say the Las Vegas convention, almost everybody comes to that convention. You get to meet them in person, as I have, and it was tremendous. It was tremendous to be among Star Trek fans and everybody was very cool. Everybody was very nice. Like I said, there aren't a-holes in this community. So and we all know, as we're all fans of different things, sci-fi and superheroes, comic books and stuff. Some of the fandoms can be very, very hostile, or very, very unpleasant, let's say. So this is a very pleasant community of Star Trek fans.
Nice, excellent. Yeah, it is important that I know there will be episodes that resonate with me in a certain way that I really like, and I might even know the reason I like it is like it's a silly thing. I know this is really silly, but I like it for this reason. Now, you don't like that episode. You might even be like, objectively, this is a bad episode. But it's important that I can accept that, yeah, I understand why you feel that way. Like, in fact, the reason I like it is so niche that you probably wouldn't like it, but that's absolutely fine. And we can still be friends. Like, it doesn't matter that we don't like the same. But there are people that it's like, no, my opinion is, is the mean in which everything should be measured against.
Right.
And therefore, if you disagree with my opinion, you must be wrong and a terrible person. And you're like, oh, wait, where does this come from? Like, guys, I know we all love Star Trek, but it is just a TV show. Like,
Yes.
just just bring it down a notch. I think that's nice. There are, I don't know, countless podcasts where they review episodes of Star Trek, right? Like, or if we're going to review episodes of other TV shows, we're just the number's infinite. It is interesting, isn't it, when people that are involved in the show, it them reviewing episodes, it's completely different from fans reviewing episodes of shows. They're going back and watching a show and they're talking about, and sometimes they will give you like behind the scenes stories, but they're always going to be second, third hand accounts that they've picked up from somewhere. Oh, I remember seeing an interview with so and so and they talked about this thing. Whereas when you can have people that were like, oh yeah, that day the catering was really bad, so everyone was in a bad mood, and that's why this happened. You're like, well, that's
Yeah.
that's interesting. Like, there's fascinating things that you can just pick up, and I guess once you've been on the show and you've started doing this and you've kind of got your foot in that door, even then, yeah, when you move on to reviewing other shows, it's not so hard to kind of be like, well, we've already kind of got our we've got our foot in the Star Trek door. We can grab somebody that was involved with this show or involved with that show because they're all part of the big Star Trek family.
Mhm.
So yeah, okay, I understand now. I understand why you may label it as essential listening. That's fine. Um, I also think the community element is very interesting because I would flip it the other way as someone who knows already he absolutely will not be going to Las Vegas this year and probably not next year or the following year.
Mhm.
Um, it's nice that you can have these online communities as well because you know that wasn't a thing in the past, right?
Right.
If you were if you lived somewhere a little bit more isolated and there weren't other people that liked Star Trek in your area, guess what?
Right.
That's it, right? That's your secret fandom because you
Mhm.
just there's no one to talk to about it. Um, so I think it is nice for people that know, okay, I'm not going to be able to go to Vegas. I might get to go to like a small con maybe somewhere, but that's sort of the limit. Online communities can be a great thing, but as we've already said, they can also be
Uh, Very
a
toxic.
challenging thing
Yeah.
at times. Yeah. Okay. So, are you watching these? Because you were talking about the live chat going off. So, is this something that you try and catch like episodes live as they go,
Yeah,
or is it?
yeah. I
Yeah.
try to watch. I try to come on and join the show in every episode. And I'm in the live chat, so I'll participate. But I'm also friends with everybody on that podcast, and occasionally I'm a guest as well. So and
Right.
and um, they usually use Screen Rant articles as the basis of news reporting, especially on the Tuesday show, which is the news show.
Right.
So I tend to try, and if I'm not actually on the podcast to present the news myself, I'll be on the live chat, just kind of adding context
Yeah.
just maybe telling a joke or two, or just filling it, or just adding to the conversation.
Yeah. I like the idea that they're giving sort of behind the scenes, like little, bits of information from when they were starring in shows. And you're giving little bits of behind the scenes for, well, here's an interesting thing. When I was writing this article,
Yeah.
what you don't know is yeah, that's it. Oh, no, there's so many layers, so many layers of behind the scenes. When for anyone that hasn't, I always it's fascinating the idea that there'll be people watching and listening to this that aren't going and watching and listening to something that is way bigger. But let's pretend that's the universe we live in, and maybe
Mhm.
there's people here that aren't listening to that. When do the live shows go out?
Sure. So the live show is on Tuesdays at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, and then Fridays it's like the hangout show called Star Trek and Chill, where they do some news, but they usually just like relax and play games and shoot the shit about Star Trek. That is Fridays at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, and then the Seventh Rule. When does the Seventh Rule come on? Sundays, I believe, at noon. And then also whenever there's a new Star Trek on, because every new Star Trek drops on a Thursday, they usually have the review of it that night, the Thursday night.
Right. Okay. What time is that for you?
Oh, for me, 9 a.m. 9 a.m. here in the Philippines, so it's not so bad.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah,
that's not too bad. I was
exactly.
I was expecting sometime in the middle of the night, to be honest. I wasn't really
No,
running the.
I do. I do
That's
now.
more likely for me.
Now, when I interview talent, for Star Trek or what have you, or anything else, that's when I'm doing it in the middle of the night. Like
Yeah.
I make myself I make myself available for when the talent is available. So, that's what I signed up for when I moved overseas. So like
Yes.
I'll do an interview at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning Manila time, and
Right.
that's just part of the
Yeah.
job.
It's fun. It is, and as much as possible, like, I try to adjust to the schedule of my guests and be like, "Well, what's convenient for you? Let's work it out for you." And, last week's episode with Tal from, Low Value Animations, we'd set it up and I'd worked out the time zones, and somehow there'd been, like, a miscommunication, I think, and he thought it was gonna be, like, 12 o'clock midnight for him, instead of it being 12 o'clock midday. And I was like, "No, no, 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 it was midday. You said you're available the whole day. It's midday. I wouldn't make you come on at midnight to record an episode of my podcast. I think that would be a pretty bad taste." But
I've had to I've had to force myself
but
to become an
he
expert on
would
it.
have been willing. He would have been willing to do it.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. Sorry?
No, I've had to force myself to be an expert on time zones because of Zoom interviews, and also because of embargoes of things. Like I
Yes.
actually really have to be careful about certain things that are embargoed and when to publish them and when to schedule them because things
Yeah.
it could be a disaster. For instance, if I thought something
Yes.
that was at 12 midnight was actually supposed to happen at 12 noon.
Yes. That could get you in a little bit of trouble. I use there's a website, Time Buddy. Are you familiar with this
No,
one?
no,
And it just gives you yeah, it's very convenient because you can just put in any place and it sort of just has these like bars running across with all the times,
great.
and it's just
I will
very
use
easy to
that.
kind of drop down. And I use that for another podcast world I'm in, where I have again lots of interviews, and yes, it's people from the States or different parts of the world, and I'm constantly playing with time zones. So I like yourself, John, have become a master of time zones, which is probably why we started the episode by talking about the fact that in Star Trek it seems not to be an issue that time zones are a thing at
Right.
all. So that's
I think
yeah,
didn't they say in Deep
but
Space
that's
Nine once they had a 26-hour day on the station, which I thought was really interesting.
yeah.
I'm not sure how that works, but
I'm not sure how that works. Yeah, I guess, I mean, it's all artificial lighting, right? So it doesn't really matter. Doesn't really matter. But yeah, I just find it's not so much like planet to planet. It's the fact that planet specific is where I lose it, because I'm sort of like, oh, with subspace and warp drive and this and that, and we'll make sure we arrive, and it's like, oh, that all works until you work out how just like our time zones work on one planet, and depending on where you are,
yes,
the time zone will be different.
somehow 9 a.m. on the
And
Enterprise
I'm
is
guessing,
9 a.m. on the planet.
yeah, or it might be 9 a.m. on the planet, you know, on the east side, but on the
Right.
west side of the planet, it's not. They're like, where is he? Oh, he's in the other. Oh man. And I guess with like, you know, I mean, does transporter technology eliminate jet lag? That's the question that
I
we've got to
suppose,
ask,
yeah.
really.
I think
It's
yeah,
like,
I
it's
guess it
true
must.
you didn't fly, but you suddenly, I don't know, is it worse? Is the sort of 12 hours on a plane, does that acclimatize you to the change in time? Or would like transporting and going from it being 6 a.m. in the morning to it suddenly being 6 p.m. in a matter of
Right.
seconds,
Yeah. I
is
don't
that
know.
worse?
Everybody,
I don't know.
nobody seems to suffer any ill effects. Everybody just behaves as
Oh,
normal. They step off that transporter pad and
right.
they're totally fine.
But I tell you what, John, if in the future I read a Screen Rant article talking about time zones in Star Trek, and I'm not credited with this idea,
I will be sure to credit you if
okay,
I
what?
do such an article. If such an article will exist,
Yeah,
I
I
think
don't know if it's credit
I
or
have to kind
just
of brace
like
my brain.
justify why this. Yeah. Um, Going back to your recommendation, John, how did you? Were you there from like the beginning when they first started the podcast? Did you come in
Mm,
late? Like, how did you come
no,
across
no.
it?
I came. Well, I came in. I believe I came in during the pandemic. Was when I found it out. We were all home, we were all just looking for things to do to occupy ourselves, watch, read. Um, in my case, the algorithms of YouTube just kind of somehow told me. Somehow I must have been searching for Star Trek Deep Space Nine
Yeah.
stuff because the algorithms fed me the seventh rule, and so and it was the fact that Sirach Lofton and Aaron Eisenberg were reviewing their old episodes that got me really interested. Just because at that time I'd never heard of actors going back and watching their own episodes. Now it's a whole thing. Obviously, I think every old
Hmm.
show has some form of it, but back then, yeah, it was a fairly new idea, and so it was really interesting to watch Sirach and Aaron and Ryan, who was the producer and host, go back and watch these old episodes and hearing these old stories about what it was like back 30 years ago, as it turns out. God, how long ago those episodes were on the air.
Yeah. That, it is lovely and it's fascinating, but you are absolutely right that as soon as you start playing with like how long ago stuff was, it's terrifying. You're like, oh yeah, I remember watching it when it came out and it was wonderful. And then people are like, yeah, and when it came out 30 years ago, and you're like, oh, what?
I know.
No, surely it was just a couple of years ago, right? Surely it can't have been that
Yeah,
For me, it was
our
when
brains
I
can't
was
accept anything
listening
longer than
to
20 years.
a
Everything
Star Trek
was
podcast
maximum 20 years
or
ago.
something, and
Most.
yeah.
But yeah,
Well, it's when somebody referred to like TNG and DS9 and Voyager as classic as like classic Trek. And I was like, whoa, 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 no, 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 no! You don't understand. TOS is classic
yeah,
Trek. The TNG is modern. That's
right.
modern Star Trek. What are you talking about?
And it's crazy when you think about it. Like
And
with TNG, like when that started, like if you're like, oh gosh, old Star Trek, that was only 20 years old, and now you now we're 30 years removed from TNG, 35 years removed from TNG, and 60 years removed from original series, which is crazy to think about.
yeah. Yeah. What's next? That's the question. What happens after the next sort of gap before they then put something like, oh, I don't know.
Well, that is a big question that Paramount Skydance has to answer over the next couple of years. I think 2026 will be a pretty newsworthy year in terms of when they start announcing what they're actually going to start doing, because a lot of things are going to change in
Yes.
2026 during the 60th anniversary. Star Trek television is winding down as we've seen it for the last 10 years. The Paramount Plus era of Star Trek is going to transition into something new because everything that started from Star Trek Discovery in 2017 on is going to wrap up by 2027, which because there's only two shows left from that suite of shows that Discovery kind of launched, which are Strange New
Yeah.
Worlds and Starfleet Academy, and there's 2 seasons of those to come. And I think both of those, the final, well, I don't want to see the final season of Starfleet Academy because we don't know if it'll be renewed. But we know that there are going to be 2 seasons of each coming over the next couple of years. But what happens after that, we don't know, because the other big thing that's going to happen in 2026 is that Alex Kurtzman, who's been running Star Trek since 2016, and Secret Hideout, his production company, I believe that their deal with Paramount ends in 2026, and we don't know if they'll be re-upped or if they're going to, if the powers that be will start looking for a new Star Trek, showrunner or what have you. We don't know what's going to happen. So, if Alex Kurtzman and Secret Hideout stay, we don't know what that would mean in terms of what new Star Trek shows will start to ramp up, and if somebody else comes in to take over and run Star Trek on the TV side, we also who knows what they'll green light. Who knows what shows will be developed? So
Yeah.
things will look very, very different. And so the Paramount Plus era from Star Trek Discovery on is going to wind down in the next 2 years, and then something else will take its place. Or maybe there'll be a gap. It won't be 12 years like it was after Enterprise, but maybe there'll be a little gap, and then something will come into place.
Yeah, a little palate cleanse. Just
Perhaps.
just let's take a breath, have a think about it, then come back with something really good. I mean, this isn't the purpose of the show, but I've got to ask, what would you like? Like, what would you like to be the next thing? If or if there's going to be a change, we're talking of like this style is going to change. What would you like to take its place? Is there something you think I just kind of wish Star Trek would go a little bit more in this direction?
Um,
What would that be?
Creatively, it's hard to say. I mean, so much has happened and been done over the last 10 years in Star Trek. I mean, one thing that I am very, very excited about, not that it's actually something that's gonna happen, but it could potentially happen, is back in August, the idea of Scott Bakula coming back in a spin-off
Right.
series called Star Trek United, which was conceived by Michael Sussman, who was a writer and producer on Star Trek Enterprise. That kind of came out of nowhere. That was not announced, but that was mentioned for the first time at Las Vegas, and it kind of took on a momentum of its own. And I've written many, many articles because I'm very excited about this idea. So I would love to see that show because that's part of what is being part of what makes it exciting is that it's kind of being conceived as Star Trek's version of Andor, which is kind of a funny old thing in its own right. That that Andor is now this prestigious show of like the highest level of science fiction television of that came out in the last like year or so. It's being held up in this lofty thing. It's like, oh my gosh, this is like the new pinnacle of sci-fi TV. But it's like Star Trek has been doing incredible TV for 60 years. Like Star Trek's TV has been phenomenal. But at the same time, the idea of trying to do a prestige show, a prestige Star Trek show in the vein of Andor, that's a political thriller and a family thriller, but also answers all these
Mhm.
questions about this era of the young United Federation of Planets and what happened to President Archer, in the late 22nd century. All that stuff is really exciting to me, and I would love to see that show happen. If it does indeed happen, if that's something Paramount Skydance wants to pursue, which I hope they do,
Yeah.
because it's Scott Bakula coming back is a very exciting idea that I know I speak for a lot of fans. We would love to see him kind of come back, because he and Avery Brooks were the only two captains of the classic era who did not make a comeback or have not come back yet. And it's at least it's
Yeah.
Bakula's turn, as I see it.
Yeah. I mean, I think it was maybe a Trek Culture episode where I heard them in having the interview talking about that,
Mhm.
talking about the premise of the show and all of that. And it does, listening to that, you can see why, the passion behind it and how they feel, and there would be so much love put into that show, which is important. It's not a cash grab. It's not a, we've got this IP we need to use, let's make something. It's we've got this idea that works and we want to explore that, which is usually, the better the better route to
Yes.
get something that's good. On the other side, I'm more and more leaning to, can we just have a new ship and a new crew
Yep.
and just be, I don't need everybody to know everybody and to be related.
Mhm.
And actually, what I'd like to do is learn about these characters as themselves, not these characters in how they relate to other people in the Star Trek world, but, you know, who's this guy and
Mhm.
why would I want to be his friend and why do I think he'd be a good and learn about them. But I also feel to do that because, one of the complaints with Discovery was there were all these bridge crew members who I couldn't remember their names. I
Yep.
didn't know anything about them.
Yes.
Like and sometimes you'd get little glimpses of them, and you'd be like, oh, they seem fun, or they seem like a nice character, but there's just no time, and everything is running so fast. There's just no time to get to know them.
Yeah.
Um, and I know I was talking to someone and they were saying, "Oh, well, modern television, this is it, right? It's like 10-episode series. That's the way that's modern TV." But I actually think that that's just modern US TV because if you watch Korean shows, they'll run for 20-hour-long episodes. Like they
Mm.
don't care. They're like,
Mm.
We've got a good premise. People are interested. We're just going to do a long." I mean, UK shows historically have always been 6 episodes. Like that's it.
Yes. Yes.
That's what they put out. So it's not, it depends a bit where you are, but I just think I would like a new ship, a new crew, and to spend time with them and
Mhm.
just see them go off. Ha I'd like it to be I'd like it that you can check in week by week, and there will be maybe some overarching plot device that's sort of linking everything together, but at the same time, if you miss an episode and come in and just wanna watch one episode, there's a complete story with a start, middle, and end. Like, that's and I know, John, I'm showing my age, and you're saying, "That's not how TV works anymore. That's not
Yeah.
what we do," but
I
maybe
know.
it should be.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I mean, I also obviously I became a Star Trek fan in the syndication 22 to 26 episode era. And the drawbacks of that era was that the writers were so taxed with trying to come up with episodes
Mm,
because there were so many per season that sometimes some of them were terrible, but that's okay because sometimes those terrible episodes also become like little cult favorites that we latch onto for whatever weird reason. But television has changed. It's funny, I've been rewatching Mad Men since now it's on HBO Max, and that show ran 13 episodes per season, and it's a pretty large cast, but you get to know everybody. And I thought, you know what, right now modern Star Trek is 10 episodes. If 22 is just impossible under the way television is made now, I don't know, 13 feels like a pretty okay compromise. Even those 3 extra episodes kind of could help flesh out characters more, give us a little bit more time with them, and tell overarching stories So I don't know, like just from the Mad Men example, because again, that's a
Yeah.
show with 7 or 8 main characters plus a lot of ancillary characters. 13 seems to work out pretty well for them. So I don't know. Maybe 13 might be a
Yeah.
good number to pursue. I know Discovery was like 15 when it started because it was under a Netflix deal, and
Mm.
Netflix ordered 15, and then it gradually went down to 10 by like season 3 or 4. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think maybe 13 might work if we could just get an extra 3 hours out of Paramount Plus or whatever.
Yeah. Because I sort of, I mean, you're much more involved in the behind the scenes and stuff of just television and studios and how it works. But I remember when like streaming became a thing, and it was like, well, now we're going to make we're making a show for streaming as opposed to we're making a show for television, where we were with television contractually obliged to fill
Mhm.
22 slots, and that was sort of it.
Mhm.
And it's like this weird thing where we see it happen with episode run times. Shows will come out and you'll be like, this episode's 55 minutes. This episode's an hour and 2 minutes. This episode is 47 minutes. And it's like, well, we can be as long as short as we need within reason. It's like, okay. But yet series are still stuck to like, we have to do 10 episodes or we have to do 20 episodes. And it's like, well, why don't you just write a great series and then work out how many episodes that needs? And be like, okay, we've got these, like, these are all the stories we've got. Here we go. And we think, yeah, 14 episodes, that would be perfect. And
Mhm.
then do that. Like, why can't we do that?
Yeah, it depends on the
Anyway,
studio. It depends on there's so many factors involved. A show like Star Trek now, which is is one of the complaints of of some longtime fans where who say that Star Trek today is basically shot like a giant movie. And maybe
mm,
you could spend less on visual effects, you could spend less on what's on the screen, and you know make it a little bit more about good writing and good character stuff, and make it look more like 90s Trek, which is 90s Trek is basically like a play, just like there's a proscenium
yeah.
arch, which is which is the Enterprise bridge. We only saw it from certain angles, and it was very very talky, but we love that. We love all the intelligent conversation. We love all the moral complexity, characters bouncing ideas off each other, arguing, and trying to find the right solutions. And that has been lost. To
Hmm.
a large degree because basically the J.J. Abrams movies changed what Star Trek is. Star Trek had to be upgraded visually. It just did.
Yeah.
It had to evolve into the 21st century, but Discovery took a lot of hits for this also, which is because it was basically an action show. It was basically very propulsive. It moved really fast, and there wasn't a whole lot of time of thought because we had to move to the next thing because there was a crisis, and
Mm,
Michael Burnham had to go and jump into action literally and start blasting people and solving and fighting and solving problems. And Strange New Worlds kind of pulled it back to that episodic thing, and taking our
mm,
time and getting to know the characters more. But yeah, I think there's a happier medium to be found where Star Trek can be more about ideas and a little bit less about just spectacle, while still
yeah.
maintaining the high visual quality that Star Trek should have at this point.
Mhm.
So that's just my thoughts on that.
It's a good thought. Sometimes I just think I'd love to get in a room with some of the people that are making the decisions and just pitch little sort of, well, have you thought about it? So I know there's been, this idea now that television is made, what is it, like second screen viewing? This idea that that while people are watching your TV show, they're on their phone, right?
Yes.
Like, and that's why we're quite often told what's happening on the screen because they realize people are looking down at their phone, they're not paying that
Mhm.
much attention. And I kind of want to say to them, so you realize they might be looking at, scrolling through Instagram, looking at their screen, their ears are still working. So more talking, right? More talking and less visual flash that they're missing anyway could be a
Right.
good, like, that works for your premise, right? So let's have episodes where there's a bit more dialogue because even if they're scrolling on their phone, they're going to hear some interesting, you know, interaction going on between, on the view screen or whatever. And maybe that's still working, right? And guess what? It costs you less money than the big
Mhm.
visual flash that they're not watching because they're looking at their phone. and they hear the explosion and they look up and they're like, oh, something must have happened. So you know, I think I could
Right.
maybe pitch it to
Better.
the studio execs. I think if I could get in, get me in a room with these people. That's all I'm saying, John. No, I don't want it. I don't want to be involved. Because as we've mentioned before, some of the fandom can be quite toxic. So I don't need them coming
Oh
after
yeah,
me.
yeah, yeah. You'll be
Okay.
no. Yeah.
Um, all right. Well,
Oh,
I
did I?
appreciate
No.
the recommendation for a podcast. I
Mm.
definitely feel like now I'm gonna. What worries me is what I'm a bit of a completist with these things, so I'm gonna
Oh
find it
gosh,
very
yeah.
hard to
There are
like
hundreds
dip
of.
in and start listening to a new. I what I usually do on something like this is I listen week to week to the new stuff, and then in the meantime, because I used to just go back, start from the beginning, and like catch
Mm.
up over a long period of time. But then you'd get towards things, and it would be like, oh, I started listening at this time, and then they start talking about upcoming events or something that's happening, and I was like, oh, if I'd known, I could have been involved with that, or I could have done that thing. So now I try to kind of like new episode. Okay, we've got caught up on the new episodes. Go back and start. And I have caught up on podcasts like you know that came. I started listening 7 years late, and then I just binge massive amount of episodes. So it is doable. I appreciate that it doesn't cost me money. The last couple
Right.
of shows I've spent money on on the podcast while recording. I've bought books or audiobooks and things like that. So this is a nice free recommendation, which I appreciate. So that's good as well.
I'm happy to help with that.
But yeah,
One of the fun things too, if you wanted to binge, right? If you, especially like, let's say outside of Deep Space Nine, the episodes of the Seventh Rule in particular, that cover the Next Generation or the original series. One of the fun things about doing that is that Sirach Lofton was had never has not seen these episodes, so he's watching them for the first time. And so it's fun watching him kind of see Next Generation from the beginning, and like season one are very, very funny to watch because those episodes are very, very bad. And and he's very he's very honest about his reactions to some of these episodes. And obviously, the Next Generation becomes spectacular as it continues after season three on. Like it's some of the best sci-fi television ever made. And about also the original series, he's never seen the original series. So we have Walter Koenig giving his recollections of what it was like to be on the set in 1967 when this was happening. Then you have Sirach reacting to them for the first time. It's a really nice juxtaposition of perspectives from two Star Trek
yeah.
actors from two different generations.
And they're so different. They're different, but they're so different, aren't they?
Yeah,
These generations, like it's like it was the same show technically. Like they're both
technically,
Star
yeah.
Trek, but but yeah, very, very different. Ah, that's wonderful. John, I always like to offer my guests an opportunity to request recommendations. Is there any? I mean, as someone who's so heavily involved in Star Trek, I'd be intrigued to know this. But is there any
Hmm.
aspect of the greater universe of Star Trek, the franchise and comics and books and collectibles or whatever that you've not looked into that you think, you know what, I'd be interested to get a little bit more involved in that?
Actually, yes. I part of my job is to be very concerned and write about canon. And in Star Trek, what consists of canon is basically what appears in the TV and movies. And so there's a whole other B canon involved with the books and video games and comics that can sometimes inform the TV shows and are sometimes even written by producers and writers of the TV shows. But by and large, they are not considered canon. But I hear such amazing things about the current IDW Star Trek comics, which I just have not had time to pursue. A couple of years ago, I was gifted a hardcover of Star Trek Year 5, which I thought was great. But there's things going on right now, like the Last Starship, where they brought back Captain Kirk. You know, he's alive. And then there was a whole something called like Star Trek. I think it was called Star Trek Defiant, where like Captain Cisco gathered like a multi-generational crew with like Data and a bunch
Mm.
of other people, and that there was a run of those comics. And then there was also Star Trek Sons, which I thought was really cool, with like Jay Sisko and Wesley Crusher, I think, and Nog, and then like Q2, the Q's son from Voyager, was on that, and like there was a whole run of just the offspring of Star Trek, of famous Star Trek people. So I would love, uh, to have the time to read those
Yeah.
comics, because that's a whole other side of Star Trek that I'm a big comic book fan as well. So that I find fascinating.
Yeah.
I just have not had time to dive into.
Okay. What you need is someone to tell you, like, this is the one. This is the one that will change your life. This is the one you must read. And then you're like, okay, I'll make time for that one. But then that's dangerous, because then you're in. And once you're in, you're in. And then, suddenly you've got
Yes,
no more free
yes,
time. Your
exactly,
life is
exactly. Where do
your,
I start?
your life is
Yeah.
dedicated. Oh, excellent. Very quickly then, before we wrap up, I must pull up a couple of comments. So if you comment on the YouTube videos, or if you leave a review, still would love some reviews for the audio versions, guys. That would be really appreciated. But we'd just like to read them out. So this one was a comment left on the episode with Tom from Trek Culture, and his recommendation, A Mem Noir by Brent Spiner. And it's basically just Jesse from Crusher Convos saying, fantastic recommendation. The audio version is gold with all the actors doing their voices. I love it. So it's always nice when we have people confirming how good a recommendation is. And My Figure Universe is just saying, wow, this one went up a lot earlier than I thought it was going to go up. Yeah, I think the episodes are coming out a little bit earlier, same day, but a bit, I guess, same day for me, but maybe it's a different day for other parts of the world. Again, master of time zones, but they're coming up a bit earlier now, people. So hopefully that helps you if you want to listen to them on your, on your drive to work or something. I don't know. I don't know. Excellent. John, where can people find you? What should they be expecting from you? This episode will be coming out, I think, in about 3 or 4 days from when we record it. So have you got anything coming up that people should be checking out, getting
Well,
from
I
you?
mean,
Oh,
I generate content daily for ScreenRant.com. So you can always check Screen Rant and read the latest stuff from Star Trek. I'm still the main writer for Star Trek television, and there are some other people who write about Star Trek as well, but most of the content gets generated that comes from me. I'm proud to say. So ScreenRant.com for that, and my social media handles are Back of the Head on Instagram and Threads and Blue Sky. What's coming up? Just some cool articles coming towards the end of the year, and then once Starfleet Academy debuts in January 15th, it's going to be full speed ahead, warp speed 9 on Starfleet Academy. Um, Hopefully there'll be some cool interviews with the cast, and also just a lot of analysis of every episode coming up. So starting with the 2-episode premiere in January 15th.
excellent. Okay, very exciting. Everybody mark that in your calendars. So we're all ready. If you hadn't already marked it in your calendar, mark it again. Excellent. Well, thank you very much to John. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Go and make sure you're checking out those Screen Rant articles. I will be back next week with another guest and another recommendation.